In 1956, in a small coastal town of Southern California's Los Angeles County, named Manhattan Beach, a small, family-owned and operated preschool/daycare center opened to the public. The McMartin Preschool, owned and operated and opened by Virginia and Peggy McMartin, a mother and daughter duo. The preschool felt quaint and rather homely to the parents and residents of Manhattan Beach. The all handmade wooden toys in the yard of the school definitely helped make it feel that way for passerbys. Though by today's standards, it's pretty creepy and, low budget. Anyway, self-proclaimed as one of LA's most prestigious preschools at the time, the school managed to win a few local awards, as well as Peggy being named Manhattan Beach's Woman of the Year, just a year prior to these allegations coming out. And by the 1970s, there was a 6-month waiting list for McMartin Preschool, having become rather sought after by the parents in the local areas. The school would go on to operate for 28 years before being permanently closed on January 13th of 1984 when they lost their licenses to teach. On May 12th of 1983, a woman named Judy Johnson, a resident of Manhattan Beach, had a 2-year-old son named Billy, whom she enrolled at McMartin Preschool. A mere 3 months later, Billy comes home complaining about a sore bottom. So Judy takes him to the doctor, who confirms that he has signs of sexual abuse. So it's confirmed to her by professionals, and so that's when she makes the police report. And then on August 30th, she takes Billy down to the police station to be interviewed by the police. On September 7th of 1983, Ray Buckey gets arrested after being accused by Billy of being his sexual abuser. Ray is Peggy's son, so Virginia's grandson. The very next day, on September 8th of 1983, the police sent out a letter to every McMartin parent telling them about the accusations and asking them to check with their own children for signs of sexual abuse. The letter included a sort of checklist worksheet for the parents to fill out and then return back to the police once they had evaluated their own children. Not surprisingly, several other children had symptoms matching Judy's son's symptoms, including new rashes around their genitals as well as irregular bowel movements, with some children actually defecating in their pants despite having not done so since stopping diapers. Some children even had rashes around their mouths, thus spawning regular meetings between the parents to discuss and cross-reference their children's symptoms in attempts to formulate some sort of pattern between the children, resulting in more sadistic things being revealed to be shared between the children. Needless to say, the parents were in fact able to establish these patterns. On October 17th of 1983, the Los Angeles County District's Attorney's Office asks the Children's Institute International in Los Angeles to interview the children. Over 250 children would end up being interviewed by a woman named Kee McFarlane and a few of her associates. On March 11th, 1984, a number of Los Angeles area daycare centers are raided and searched, but nothing from those preschools comes up with any sort of sexual abuse. Sorry if my jumping around the timeline is kind of confusing, but I try to emphasize the year so you know what I'm talking about. So, in 83, when they were still being interviewed by Kee McFarlane, the children started to come out with very, very obscure and bizarre claims, way more than just sexual abuse. Along with confessions of abuse, the children began to tell of other strange and criminal activities of the school staff. They told of being restrained to objects, the staff taking them into secret rooms and tunnels and to off-site location, transported by vehicles, planes, and helicopters. Also tales of other individuals coming to the school to abuse them, of the staff killing animals in front of them, threats against their lives and their parents' lives, sacrificial burnings, and a game called Naked Movie Star, of them dressing up in Santa costumes, witch costumes, and a lion that was kept in a secret room underneath the school. Also a devil being underneath the school. Of there being a giant devil picture downstairs in the tunnels. What else? Of being taken to churches, government buildings to be abused, among many, many, many other things. Many of the children told the exact same events, as well as many of them naming the same people, places, and locations of certain hidden features of the school. Pitifully, the bizarre confessions from these children ultimately enabled the many to label them as outlandish and false and of pure imagination, and shamefully aiding in the perpetrators never being sentenced. Key McFarlane would become a scapegoat for the defense, whom stated that McFarlane is the one who planted these abuse accusations in the children's minds, or that she forced them to give answers that she wanted. She used puppets to allow the children some distance from the memory of the abuse, enabling them to feel a little bit more comfortable and to be able to open up about it and talk about the abuse. She allowed the children to show her with dolls what had happened to them. Most of the children demonstrated various sexual acts with the dolls. It's not like she showed them different sexual positions before handing them the dolls. These children did it on their own and showed her what had happened. Yet the defense kept yelling that McFarlane or the parents planted these scenarios in the children's head, or they said they did victim blaming. They blamed the children and said that the children made this all up with their 2 and 5 and 7-year-old brains. Yeah, because it's perfectly sane to assume a 2-year-old child already knows what rituals are, what animal and baby sacrifice are, what chopping off rabbit legs one by one looks like, or what tunnels are, let alone that they'd be underground, to put all these different things together to create one of the most sinister truth reveals America has ever seen. Yep, totally sane assumption. On March 22nd of 1984, Ray, Peggy Ann Bucky, Virginia McMartin, Mary Ann Jackson, Betty Rader, and Babette Spittler are indicted on 115 counts. Some of these children were extremely afraid of Babette. By May of 1984, it totaled 208 people who had been indicted for this case. And in July of 1984, 30 more people were indicted. So who are these 238 other people who were indicted for this case? That is something else that was and is withheld from the public. Understand this here and now. Any and all past or present articles, videos, news programs, and the like that push the theory of the children making it all up or push the mass hysteria lie are all aiding, whether it's knowingly or not, to the victimization of children worldwide, denying that there was ever any wrongdoing done to these children. To put it bluntly, they are on the side of the enemy. And just for a refresher, the enemy is the title that I have given to any and all individuals and corporations that partake or cover up human and especially child trafficking, child SRA, organ harvesting, breeding farms, snuff factories, adrenochrome production, and CP. So Kamala, Biden, Aquino, Obama, Oprah, news reporters, journalists, and even regular citizens. If you are not all for standing up for the children and on the side of people who acknowledge these activities actually happen, then you are on the side of the enemy. Period. If we can see news nearly every day of children getting shot, of fathers dumping their daughters into crude oil vats while they're still alive, of mothers throwing their newborn child into hospital trash cans, and we acknowledge that these things are simply sick shit that people do and are capable of, then how is it still so hard for people to believe that groups of individuals are capable of organized families, especially when a ton of money is involved? If people can rob and kill someone over $100, they can definitely do organized charities for $1 million. But don't limit yourself and get under the misconception that all the people that are involved with CP are doing it because they want to be doing it. There's people that have no other choice. These people are born into it. These people are blackmailed into it. They're kidnapped into it. They have no way to escape it except for death. Money is the root to all evil, meaning all of Earth's most evil of sins all have the greenback fueling their engines. I don't know, maybe it's hard for some people to accept and acknowledge these things because in doing so, we are also faced with having to accept and acknowledge that our military, our police, our politicians, our jurors, our judges, our churches have all been infiltrated. And I mean, I get it. Accepting and acknowledging that the entire effing world is corrupted is definitely not an easy pill to swallow. But denying it is not going to make it just go away. They will never stop until we make them pay. Also, I get that it can be somewhat discouraging to be the only one in your family or friends who believes in this stuff, let alone to be marching the streets with "We Believe the Children" signs. But we have to voice and show that we know, believe, and understand what's truly happening, and that we will not accept it any longer. They've gotten away with it for so long because we've ignored and denied it for so long. The power is in our hands. We just have to unite. If people can come together and gather in the streets over mask mandates or for Britney Spears' freedom, then we sure as hell better be able to come together for the world's children. Sorry, started going down a different road with that. I'm sorry, I'm just very, very, very passionate about this cause. So 2 trials came out of this. The first one lasting from July 13th of 1987 to January 18th of 1990. The second one lasting from May 7th of 1990 to July 27th of 1990. In 1986, the new district attorney, Ira Reiner, I don't know how you pronounce it. Anyway, he dropped all the charges against Virginia, Peggy Ann, Mary Ann, Betty Rader, and Babette Spittler, citing incredibly weak evidence, while Peggy and Ray remained in custody. On January 18th of 1990, after 3 years of testimony and 9 weeks of deliberation by the jury, Peggy McMartin Bucky was acquitted on all counts. Ray Bucky was cleared of 52 out of 65 counts and freed on bail after more than 5 years in jail. And that was on July 27th of 1990. The prosecution then gave up trying to get a conviction, and therefore the case was closed. That's a wrap, America. Nothing more to see here. Only a old victim family who lost everything because a gang of 2-year-olds decided to put them out of business. That's it. That's the only things you need to know about this case. Evil genius 2-year-olds, mafia style, took out a business of old ladies. The kids lied. The accused are innocent. The masses went into hysteria over satanic panic. Experts are not experts, and everything else is just lies. Oh, yeah, and there were no tunnels. Period. Move along, folks. Show's over. But wait, what's all this stuff that they're hiding behind their back? I don't know. Let's take a little look. First thing, Judy Johnson was not who first reported her son's signs of sexual abuse. She was the second to inform the police. You see, the doctor that she took Billy to believed Billy had signs of sexual abuse, but he wanted a second professional opinion. So he took Billy to the ER doctors in the same hospital who confirmed his findings, and, as required by law, reported the abuse to authorities before going and telling Judy. That they agreed with the initial doctor and that she should probably make her own report to the police, which she did, therefore becoming the second person to inform the authorities of Billy's injury. Every single interview that Key McFarland had with all of the children were videotaped and recorded. Every single one of those videotapes were immediately sealed away from the public. McFarland's expertise and techniques were being extremely criticized and questioned, yet we were not allowed to see the interviews for ourselves so that we could see what it was that they were seeing that she did so wrongly, or how she coerced the children so strongly and firmly. Like, she literally says, I only spent an hour with each of these children, and then that was it. They were out of my lives, and I was out of theirs. So how they think that I was able to implant such strong, memories and thoughts into these kids' head is ridiculous. And it is. Though not as ridiculous as the victim blaming, as them claiming that 2-year-olds, 5-year-olds made up these stories on their own about their teachers and their caregivers. And this also shows a little hole in the defense's claim. So they claim that Key McFarland influenced these children. Okay, so are you denying any of the time before Key came into the scenario that these kids were saying these things? Are you denying that entire time frame? Or are you claiming that somehow every single parent of these children that were saying these things somehow already knew Key McFarland and had corroborated the story with her before going to trial, and this is the institute that the Los Angeles police hired Not even that the parents hired. So the police hired these people, but somehow the parents already knew them and corroborated this story. No. At one point, Peggy McMartin said of her son, Ray, that he was a troubled youth who was trying to find his way, and who just so happened to be the most comfortable around children. Sure. And also said that she herself had been molested when she was a child. So is this a case of abused becomes abuser? Probably. And I believe it went a little something like this. Virginia McMartin is who molested Peggy McMartin. Peggy then grew up and started molesting her own son, who is Ray, and her other daughter, Peggy Ann. To me, Peggy Ann and Ray's demeanor is just victim-ish themselves. And the relationship between Ray and Peggy McMartin, I can see it, I can feel it. It's not a good relationship. Like, they sleep together regularly, for sure. Or they did, you know what I mean? Like, they're dead or whatever, but... And then Virginia and Peggy McMartin are the ringleaders. Like, those two women are not nice little old grannies. They are evil as shit. You can just see it in them. Like, they are disgusting. You can see it in their eyes, the way they look at everybody else. It's ridiculous. So they portray Virginia and Peggy McMartin as these spiritual, decent, children-loving grannies, right? Well, if you were really, really innocent... and you became a teacher because you genuinely cared about the children's well-being, then you would have a normal, platonic attachment towards those children. And if those children were to then turn around and actually lie about you like that, you would be devastated and you would probably cry. You would express this devastation and say how you only did what was best by the child and you just, taught them and you don't understand where these allegations came from, blah, blah, blah. But none of that. No tears came from these women about why their students all of a sudden just up and ruined their careers for no reason. Like, that needs to be thought about. Like, they obviously are cold at the very least aspect of, like, that spectrum, because that to me shows that they did not give a fuck about these kids and that they felt like they were above everybody else in that courtroom, and they were like, I shouldn't even be here right now because those little brats shouldn't even freaking told on me. And it's just, I hate their demeanor. I hate Virginia. I hate her. I hate her. I hate her. I'm sorry, but I do. Virginia and Peggy McMartin definitely have the elitist mentality. They think they're better than everybody because they're protected way more than a lot of people would be because of this club that they're in. So, more of enemy newspapers try to claim that Peggy appeared cheerful and friendly during the trial and passed the long hours crocheting, drawing pictures, and reading religious literature. Two thoughts I have on this. The first one being, she's doing this because what do old grandmas do? They crochet blankets. She's trying to give off the impression more that she's just an innocent, normal little grandma. Okay? She's not. Second one that I get off of this is, excuse me? What the F are you doing? It shows how little attention and care she's giving to the trial. Like, she's literally saying, I'm effing bored and this is boring and I shouldn't even be here. Like, if I was a parent of one of those kids that were accusing them of this and I saw her doing that, I would fucking flip out on her. Like, that is so disrespectful, in my opinion. Plus, it also shows that she knew she didn't have to care about the outcome because she knew she was protected. If you were literally innocent and your life and your career were literally on the line, you would not be doodling pictures or crocheting a blanket. You would be paying extra close attention to make sure that your life wasn't ruined for no reason. So to me, this just shows that yes, they are effing guilty. In December of 1986, Judy Johnson died of alcohol poisoning, less than a year before the McMartin trials began. Her son would never end up testifying at any of the trials. After a 12-day examination before her death, she was diagnosed with paranoid schizophrenia. During this time, she lost custody of Billy by the state. Okay, back up. So you may notice that on here it says that Johnson's father and brother sought to have her committed. That is complete bullshit, okay? There was a law that was passed after this trial that forbid the Los Angeles police from committing people to psychiatric wards without any warrants, because the Los Angeles police are the ones who put Judy Johnson in the mental institution, not her family. It was the Los Angeles police who kept calling Judy Johnson crazy, and people were believing them. My problem with that is this is the same Los Angeles police who also tried to tell Christine Collins that this boy was her son, who really was not her son. You guys may remember the movie The Changeling. Like, they clearly had a habit of deeming women, especially like unmarried, unwed women, crazy back in those days. And then it's like, what happened to Billy? So he gets put in the same system who tried to give Christine Collins a totally different boy, and who we know is already like corrupted with gross sicko chomo. So where'd he go? And what happened to him, and why was he still not allowed to testify? Because the first victim to come forward should definitely have been one of the first people to testify on the stand. So I think that Judy Johnson was killed, and they took her son just to abuse him even more. So eliminating the first witness and the first victim. That seems like a big first win for the quote-unquote bad guys. And just like the Ramsey case, there's other people that died surrounding this case. And in an even weirder one, we may remember the last name Bynum because of John Ramsey's friend Mike Bynum. Well, there was a man named Paul Bynum who was a witness to the McMartin case, and one day before he was set to testify, he quote-unquote committed suicide, despite his family swearing that he was not suicidal. This man was also a former Hermosa Beach police officer. Another death was on November 6th of 1985. A man named Robert Hamill Winkler, aka the Wolfman, as he was known to the children, OD'd on drugs. He was also set to be a witness for the McMartin case. Wayne Satz, a Los Angeles reporter who was the first person to talk about what was going on at the McMartin Preschool, on December 24th of 1992, was found dead in his home. There was an autopsy, but nothing ever came of it. They never said anything about the autopsy or what the autopsy revealed. So, in my opinion, he was murdered. During the trials, Wayne and Key McFarlane actually developed a romantic relationship together. One that's not so related, but still related, is in 1976, a woman named Karen Klass, who had just dropped off her youngest child at McMartin, was then murdered by being strangled to death. And she is the ex-wife of Bill Medley, who is from the band The Righteous Brothers. So there's like weird Hollywood connections as well. Speaking of Hollywood connections, as some sort of recruiting tactic aimed towards the parents, or as some sort of quote-unquote fun day for the children, the McMartin Preschool hired Gary Coleman to come perform. The other Hollywood connection is during the trials, when the children were set to take the stand, Mr. T stood outside of the courtroom door telling the children that he'd protect them against the abusers so they wouldn't be afraid to speak up about their abuse. The defense had a very subtle yet crucially damaging tactic against the prosecutors. When certain children initially refused to indulge in their abuse, with some continually insisting that they were not abused, the defense jumped on the mic to unfairly lump all of the children into this category of not abused. The defense played this lumping card again when it came to some of the most bizarre claims from some of the children, like the Chuck Norris implications. The defense again jumped on the mic and yelled, "Rubbish. This just proves that all of the children are lying, and that all of the allegations need to be lumped into one category called bullshit," which in turn caused some of the uninformed locals to fall for the bait and dismiss all of the children's claims. Just because one child may have lied or misremembered does not mean all of them did. You don't throw out an entire truckload of bananas just because one got smashed. Now, let's take a little look at why some children would say they were not abused, or why some children would say clearly untrue things, like an elephant or a lion being underneath the school. As for the elephant claim, the children who spoke of it said the elephant under the school made noises that they themselves heard, and would spray liquid from its trunk if they pulled it. Now, not to be gross, but like right away I thought about a man's penis. If a man was behind a painting of an elephant, or even a costume where his penis was positioned to look like its trunk, and the staff played recorded sounds of an elephant to a 2-year-old, it could be very, very convincing. Also, if these kids were drugged, then it'd be even more convincing and would explain some of the other more impossible claims like the hot air balloon. And the same type of scenario is what took place with the lion. The kid said it would roar if you pulled its tail. As for why some of the children would insist that they were not abused, well, some of the children very well may not have been abused. It's not a far stretch to say that they may not have abused every single kid. In fact, it makes more sense that they only abused some/most of the kids. But for some children, it was because the right to remain silent really, really affected them. This is where all the animal/baby sacrifice come into play, as well as the having the children cut and stab living things with their own hands. This is all done to traumatize the child with fear of it happening to them or their parents. Their parents, if they tell, it makes the child feel guilty for the killings because they were forced to hold the knife or what have you. This is the same reason why people like Patsy Ramsey had her dark secret that she wrote about in the Patricia Papers, but would not simply just come out and say. This is why Melinda Ramsey won't say a single word about JonBenet. It's the tremendous fear that gets instilled. Not surprisingly, this rite is always done before the age of 5 to ensure traumatization from telling. Rarely it is done to adults unless being blackmailed or initiated. McMartin kids were at that exact ripe age. And here is that wordplay that we talked about in the Ramsey case, the right to remain silent, either R-I-G-H-T or R-I-T-E. Now, you have the right to remain silent is one of the first things a police officer will tell you when detaining you. If you were a kid, let's say 13 years old for sake of argument, and you just escaped from years of abuse, chances are you're going to run for the first cop that you see to tell them of the crime. Well, you may seem erratic, delirious from dehydration, crazy, or even appear to be on drugs. Even if the cop does believe you, they're most likely going to take you down to the station for further questioning. The very second that you hear from the cop that you have the right to remain silent, you're going to get flooded with flashbacks of all that killing, blood, and suffering. So much so that you just might have a real hard time explaining what you went through. Which leads us into the whole satanic panic aspect of this whole tragedy. This is the ransom note of the McMartin case. The defense yelled about suggestive interviewing and suggestive questioning. The label satanic panic is the epitome of suggestive language. Systematically sexually abusing young innocent children, selling children no matter how they are acquired, torturing and kidnapping children and animals, fracturing someone's mind, sexual deviancy, and other sexual violence, stabbing, cutting, dismembering, or harming any living creature to the point of blood spill, drinking blood, and threatening children's lives are all satanic activities. Period. Whether or not the person doing such activities calls themselves a Satanist, or whether or not they consider what they're doing to be satanic, is completely irrelevant, 100% irrelevant, because all of those activities are ungodly and are widely associated with the label Satanism. Therefore, they are inherently satanic. I can steal cars every hour and then turn right around and swear on my life that I am not a car thief until I'm blue in the face. It's not going to change the fact that I steal cars. Do you get my point? Now, the even bigger problem with this is the stigmatism behind the word or label Satanism. It has gotten such a bad stigmatism behind it, almost as bad as the word conspiracy does. People hear you call someone out as a Satanist and boom, they think that you are a Bible-thumping religious freak, that you are uneducated and a super conservative. The name Satan is synonymous with the Judeo-Christian Bible, making non-Christians automatically dismiss your claims, makes Jews think you're stupid, makes atheists roll their eyes laughing, and liberals think that you are not inclusive, among many other preconceived thoughts about what Satanism truly is or what constitutes as Satanism or satanic. The over-the-top, in-your-face imagery of the black clothes or the tattoos being associated with Satanism is a very clever little tactic. If everyone is too busy watching the neighborhood goth kid because he scares them, then the real bad guys who dress professionally can slip under the radar. No matter what your creed or religion or personal beliefs are, the majority of us can pretty much all agree that there are some things that you just do not do as a human being. And there's almost this common understanding of what those unthinkables are. Touching children is one of them. The problem today with the label Satanist or Satanism is that the lines between personal and mental freedoms in Satanism have been extremely blurred. Today, most progressives will tell you that Satanism is nothing more than a modern form of hedonism, which does not make it any better. The term Satanism is most attributed to Anton LaVey and his founding of the Church of Satan in 1966, which greatly aids in people's assumption that Satanism is a very Hollywood, theatrical props, shock and awe sort of scene, that it's a hedonistic aesthetic, totally disregarding any knowledge of satanic groups from the past, which did not want notoriety or fame. In fact, chances are that the most dangerous Satanists are those who do not want to be associated with the label Satanist at all. But thanks to LaVey, we, as in modern man, have a very warped image of Satanism and what Satanism stands for. Today's green-haired genitalia mutilators will tell you it's about not bowing down to something we have no proof of ever existing, of it being about true freedom of self and self-expression, about materialism and physical pleasures, about individualism and validating others' desperate attempts for attention. Today's misguided chants of individualism come directly from the Temple of Set. Yeah, that Temple of Set. Michael Aquino's child molesting, baby killing Temple of Set. Michael Aquino was Anton LaVey's right-hand man and used to be a member of the Church of Satan until forming off, or branching off, and then forming the Temple of Set. So don't tell me that the Temple of Set is not satanic when it's just another branch of the Church of Satan. And now, according to LaVey, his Church of Satan and Satanism is just about being the exact opposite of what the Christians are and what the Christian Bible is. So the Satanic Bible would just be an exact opposite of the Christian Bible. So when they say in the Christian Bible, thou shalt not kill, that means that the Satanists say thou shalt kill. First of all, what is Satan? He's the great deceiver. He's the deceiver of man. He deceives man. He lies to man. So when people are asked, are you a Satanist? And they say no, why the F should we believe them? And why should we believe the Satanists when we ask them, do you guys condone sacrifices or child abuse? And they say no, why the shit should we believe them? Why? We shouldn't. And anybody that does is a because no human should worship or be attracted to something that is anti-human. It's pathetic. And then any woman who claims to be a Satanist is even more retarded because Lucifer is anti-woman. So why would you want to be something that is not only anti-human but anti-woman? People need to just open their damn eyes and see what really constitutes as satanic. You know, all this pushing for all these transgender men. Why? Because they're trying to ruin femininity. They're trying to ruin what womanhood is. That's why Dylan, freaking whatever his name is going around talking about girlhood. He'll never know what the fuck girlhood is about, but he's dementing the minds of the youth and making them think that this man knows about girlhood. And not just that, but look at the picture, the typical picture of Baphomet. It's a hermaphrodite. It's a dude with tits. So all these dudes that are getting fake tits are just glorifying and, desecrating their body, their temple, to be a replica of Baphomet. It's sick. It really, really is. And people need to think of it that way because that's exactly what it is. Anyway, enough with this whole satanic bullcrap. I could probably go on about that for days, but so back to the school. So I have a video that unfortunately, for some reason, the audio isn't working. I'll just show you guys the clip still, but then I'll just tell you what the lady's saying. So she's saying that the parents, when school first began, so when the school year would begin for McMartin Preschool, the parents were asked not to visit the school for the first 6 weeks. Now, not all of the parents listened to this rule, but when they came to the office, against the rules, a child who was in the office acting as a quote-unquote office aide would be sent to go retrieve the child that the parent was there to get and then bring that child up to the office to give to the parent. The parents had no access within the interior of the school. That's very, very sketchy. Very, very sketchy. So sketchy that that last one and the one I'm about to tell you are two of the biggest red flags to me. So the other huge red flag is that within the office and all of the classrooms, there were little, fire alarm buttons, little fire alarm triggers that said, they were painted on there, but painted above the switch said fire alarm. Now, fire alarms are pretty common, if not nowadays required in schools, office buildings, freaking everywhere, right? Especially like senior centers. And once they are activated, they are connected to the local fire station, and it sends a signal to the fire station once they are activated, letting them know that they need to go to the address that's sending that signal to go help them. The system at the McMartin School was not connected to the fire station and just acted as an alarm system within the school itself. Now, why would you need that? Maybe to inform who's ever in classroom 4 abusing somebody that, hey, a non-abuser is now on the school premise. You might want to either put your clothes on, put the kids' clothes on, or stop, or come back upstairs. Something like that, That's extremely sketchy. That is also, like, almost impersonating. Like, yeah, they weren't saying they were a firefighter, but they were saying that that's an official fire alarm. No, it wasn't. It was some sort of weird alarm system to warn them, to alert them within the school. Now, during the time that the trials were still going on, the officials, quote-unquote, did a, quote-unquote, look for the tunnels that the kids were saying existed. Their supposed search consisted of them going within the school buildings and checking if any tiles were loose. And if there wasn't, then they concluded that there were no tunnels. Totally ignoring the fact that in between the doorway of classroom 4, there was a weird little raise in the floor, and then above you was a weird little arch that it was higher than the rest of the building for some reason, and it also rose up on the floor. They totally ignored that, right? Well, after everybody got, acquitted and shit, the parents were not satisfied, obviously, with the fact that the case was now closed and nobody was being held accountable for their children's injuries. So they hired former FBI Director Ted Gunderson, along with an archaeologist from UCLA or Berkeley. I'm not, trying to be too specific on that because I just want to mainly focus on Gunderson. Now, Gunderson did his search for the tunnels by going off of what the children said. Most of the children had 2 specific points that they said were either entrances or that they said went to the tunnels. So, like any intellectual person would do, that's where Gunderson started. Like they should have started with the quote-unquote official search. Well, within this search, Gunderson discovers that, yes, there are tunnel entrances down in those exact spots that the children said they would be. Thing is, the tunnels had been filled in very, very recently, obviously within the last couple years. They were filled in, and it was able to be seen that they were filled in because the sediment that they used to fill in the tunnels was different than the other sediment around it, the sediment that wasn't dug out. And it was loose, obviously, and the other sediment that was never tunneled was still really compact. Had been compacted like that for decades, right? Not only that, but where the hump in classroom 4 was, they found an archway for another, like, little entrance, like, that you would go through in the tunnels to get to another part of the tunnel. So that little archway that the first investigation totally ignored was a dead giveaway that, yes, there's something under here. The children spoke about doing sacrifices underneath the school. They found over 100 animal bones in the tunnels, along with 2 giant containers. Not sure what was in them, but they were put there, obviously. And there was also, like, plywood above him when he was in the tunnels, and just other signs that, yes, these were tunneled out. Now, the children also said that they would go through these tunnels, and then they would pop out in the bathroom of the house next door. If you notice right here, these little 3 garages is all you could see of the front of this house. Okay, this is the house they're saying that in their bathroom was an exit of the tunnels. Gunderson found that tunnel, and it did lead to that house's bathroom, which proves that the kids were taken off the premises of the school. Now, why were the kids being taken off of the school property? Well, remember me telling you about their little game called Naked Movie Star? This consisted of the children telling about them being photographed and videotaped naked and doing sexual acts and being abused. Therefore, they were being taken off the premise of the school so that child porn could be produced. That is the underlining motive for this entire tragedy. It wasn't just the sexual abuse of them, and it wasn't the satanic induction of them. It was to produce CP. Bottom line, All of the devil worship and the blood and the killing of the animals is because a lot of that CP probably involved a lot of the blood and animals, because that would fall underneath the snuff category, and snuff films and child porn go hand in hand. And it seems to me that when one of these CP snuff films is, let's say, interrupted because the child dies or the child tells, like in this case, that it gets a very widely publicized trial, a very blown out of proportion trial, and there's a lot of same characteristics of what happened around the McMartin trial that happened with the Ramsey case. For instance, we all know that the Ramsey's book was called what? Death of Innocence. There was a book that came out about the McMartin trial early in the beginning, and it was called Abuse of Innocence. I do not find that to be a coincidence at all. And also, halfway through the trials, both cases changed DAs, and Peggy McMartin and Patsy Ramsey both won the Woman of the Year award just a year or so prior to the tragedy striking. So, affluent, small towns that do this whole Woman of the Year thing, I think we should keep our eye on.